coming up on Open Source with Tony Mottley.
So this podcast, Open Source, is the world you created, Tony, where you interview accomplished professionals across a number of industries. But you and I have been dear friends for over 30 years. And I came to you asking if I could turn the tables, and you agreed, which, I don't know, you're kind of in trouble, but you agreed. And it's not just because I respect you as a professional and as a storyteller that I wanted to interview. And it's not just because you are an Emmy award-winning television producer. Those are all good reasons to want to talk to you and share your thoughts with the world. But I wanted to interview you because you're one of the people in my life whose way of dealing with challenges has always prompted me to adjust my own perspective. And perspective can have a massive impact on how we experience life. And so for me, our friendship has been life-changing. So that's why I want to talk to you today. It's what I want to dig into today. I want to talk about how you see the world and how you tackle life's most monumental challenges. So the other day, I was hanging out with a friend and his friend, a director named Stefan Schwartz. And he was talking about how, as a director, there are kind of two ways you can go about your work. One way is you have an idea and a vision and you bend people to your will. That's one way to go about directing, a television show, a movie, whatever. The other way is you have a sense of where you want to go and you discover it together. You collaborate with the people around you to make that vision a reality. And you've always struck me as fitting into that latter category because you have an open-minded way of dealing with the world, and the connections you make and that sense of collaboration is a big part of the experience for you as I understand it. So I feel like that's kind of an important thing that I want people to understand about you and the way that I perceive you as someone that has loved and adored you all these years. It's also important to note at this point that you are both a cancer survivor who was diagnosed with multiple myeloma in 2016, which is a treatable but not curable form of cancer, as well as a man who at 60 is currently undergoing treatment for leukemia, which was diagnosed in February of this year. In a few days, you'll go back into the hospital for 5 days of inpatient chemotherapy. So that's another thing that I want folks that are listening to understand about the context of this conversation. And we'll get back to all of that in a moment. But I want to start with how we first met, which was at the PBS affiliate in Detroit in the late 80s, which I don't know, when I say it now, it sounds like a long time ago. But I had come from DC and I was working in news. And that gig at PBS was my first full-fledged producer-director gig. And you had been at it for a while already, and you were like a big brother to me. And I learned a lot from you, and we laughed a lot and collaborated and did work together that I will always be proud of. But prior to PBS, you started at the NPR affiliate. Then you made the jump to PBS, and then your career took off when you interviewed one of the greatest athletes of all time. So tell me about that.
Well, there's a lot I can say. I do remember meeting you. I think we met at the Detroit Film Theater the first time we met. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what the film was, but I do remember meeting you that evening. But I think getting back to the career starter, I think Michael Jordan, I'd said to this production team that I'm going to interview Michael Jordan, and they laughed. It was funny. Because it's like, who are you? Who do you think you are? How are you going to do that? But typical me, I had an angle on the story. And the thing was, I'd read that Michael Jordan had been cut from his varsity basketball team when he was 15. And at that time, in 1990 or 91, that wasn't a really well-known story. And so I pitched the story to the Chicago Bulls media guy, and the angle was to encourage other teams not to give up. And he liked the idea, and he said that when the Bulls are in town, 2 months from now, they play the Pistons. When they're in town, you can interview Michael. And I just thought, my God, I was on the ceiling. It was fantastic. And so when I told everybody I was going to interview Jordan, I had a date in stone. They were just like, they were shocked. But the actual interview with him was kind of weird because it's funny, having seen the Last Dance documentary last spring, about a year ago now at this point, he showed a side of himself that the public did not know about. And he was not very friendly. I had a camera guy and an audio guy, and we were in the Bulls locker room before the game. And, naked men are walking around. And as we got further and further towards the start of the game, there were more naked people walking around, and it was just weird. And so he said, he berated me for not coming to the press conference. And I told him that the media guy said that he would do the interview in the locker room one-on-one. And so he turned his back to me, put on his headphones, and put a Anita Baker CD in his CD player and said, "You're going to have to wait." And he just turned his back. So we're just standing there with a camera, a boom mic, and me looking stupid. And then after about 5 minutes, he turns around and says, "Okay, man, come on with these questions," which I thought, okay, that was kind of rude. But then we set up the light and the camera and turned it on, and he went to the $1 Million McDonald's Nike Smile. And he was very charitable at that point. And he gave me what I needed to tell the story. And the rest, as they say, is history. So that was a big moment for me. And even within that moment, I had to kind of overcome, because he embarrassed me to the point as a new producer. I kind of wanted to walk away. You know how you would just want to escape. You want to get away from something like that. And so, but I persevered.
So that was really a trial by fire kind of moment for you. You went for the top athlete you could possibly pursue at the time, such a huge star. And it wasn't such it's not like he rolled out the red carpet for you with his attitude.
No.
But it's interesting. I'm curious to know, after watching the documentary, which is a fantastic series, what did that give you any context in regards to that moment that you experienced with him?
Only that I can't. I mean, the real takeaway from my personal experience with him was leaving there. If we packed our gear and we walked away, and the media crushed the number of voices. It seemed like a symphony of voices saying, "Michael, Michael, 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 Michael. Sign this, do this, do that." And it was just bizarre, and that stuck with me. And I think he has such a demand on his time, on his being, that I think it's not something that most athletes ever deal with. And he did it for an extended period of time. So when you look at the documentary, you look at a person that's managing being probably the most popular person in America, at least in American sports, for a decade or so.
Right.
And so I think that you just look at his experience. I didn't judge it. I just looked at, oh my goodness, look at him trying to manage this. And he had mechanisms to manage it. And some of it was being a little off-putting, kind of being an asshole sometimes. And he would be nice to certain people that he wanted to play cards with or to gamble with. But yeah, I think he was an expert at manipulating relationships.
Mm-hmm. And so as a director, as a producer, as a storyteller, how did that experience influence how you dealt with all the other super well-known people that you would interview and work with, as your career progressed? Because that was just the start of lots of other super well-known athletes and lots of celebrities that you interviewed. So how did that shape your approach and your perspective?
I think you framed it really well, because I consider myself, and I think about it even now every day, as a collaborator. And I enjoy that part of it. And the other part, I think, dealing with someone like Michael Jordan and other more, very well-known people, is I've become very comfortable not knowing the answers to all of the questions and just kind of trying to discover something interesting and new as I go along. So it's not interesting to me to control a situation. And I don't knock people that do. It doesn't work for me. I just don't think that way. And when I find an interesting subject, I remember I did this documentary on lead-based pain, and I was working with this young lead prevention team, and it was pretty boring. I'd been to 3 or 4 of their meetings, and it was pretty boring. And they said, well, tomorrow, maybe you could come tomorrow. We're going to go meet Miss Brown. I said, well, who's Miss Brown? They said, well, it's this lady on the east side of Detroit, rough neighborhood. She's got 7 kids. 5 of them have lead poisoning. I thought, oh, man, I want to meet her. And, that was a turning point even in that project. Meeting people who have real challenges in their lives and confronting them and getting it on film it's like, that's the best thing ever. And I remember Miss Brown, because most people that are poor or live in poverty, they don't feel listened to. And so when they meet someone like you or me, and we want to tell their story, we want to hear their story, and we stick a microphone and camera in their face for a couple hours, they let it all out. They tell you everything. And she had photographs of places that she used to live, because she had been, I think she lived in 11 different places in the previous 5 or 6 years. And I think I used part of that because people don't really understand when you're really poor, getting evicted is a normal part of life, going from place to place. And then when you're a woman, a single mother with 7 kids, it's illegal, but people don't want to rent to you.
Right.
And so one of her stories was that she rented a condemned home and she paid $500-$600 a month. The landlord promised her that he would fix the house up. And of course, the roof had caved in. Kimberly, I went to the house to visit it, and the side door was open. And fortunately, I waited until my eyes adjusted from the daylight to the inside before I went in, because there were no cellar stairs. And if I had walked in, I could have just fallen 10, 12 feet to the concrete floor. And it's just, people live in unusual places and accept unusual circumstances because they're poor.
Right.
And, we look at that and say, ooh, what's wrong with her? Why would she do that? But they don't have choices.
A big part of your work has always been about giving a voice to people who, because they're not celebrities, because they're not wealthy, because, they don't have some extreme sort of marketable talent like athleticism or whatnot, they're not being heard. Can you talk a little bit about how social justice and mentoring have always been central to your life and to your work and your purpose?
Well, a couple of things. It's partly a product of how I grew up. My parents were divorced before I was born. And so I don't remember living with both of my parents at the same time. And even though I had a relationship with my father, that's when your home life doesn't match the home life of your peers, especially when you're younger, you feel odd. You feel like you don't fit in. And so that always kind of stayed with me. And my mother was a public health nurse, and I spent my growing up time with her. And so we had homeless families come and stay with us, kids sleeping in our bed because they don't have anywhere to go. They're going to be with us for 3 days. And so that was my experience. And I'm sure as a kid, it bothered me as a kid because that's my room, that's my stuff. But you get over that. And you realize, because my mother was so serious about her commitment to her patients and her families, it made you take it seriously. And so I remember going to a drug clinic when I was 10, 11 years old and seeing these heroin addicts with really swollen, peeling hands, skin just peeling off their hands, and telling you don't be a dope fiend, and seeing 10, 11-year-old pregnant girls, with babies. So all of that kind of stayed with me. And I realized as I got older that people they don't just choose that all the time. Sometimes their circumstances thrust that upon them, and they deserve the respect and dignity that anybody else does. And so we often don't hear what they've been going through and what their challenges are. And in certain contexts, I want to hear those stories.
What do you think is the role of the media? What kind of power does it hold? What are the positive aspects of it and the negative aspects of it?
Even when you think about when you and I were together starting out, it's changed. There's so many more channels now and so many more platforms. There's so many more opportunities. I think that is a good thing. And I think it's also can be challenging because there's so much misinformation and misinformation is kind of allowed. Fox News is allowed, and it's not being for or against Fox News, but I think news entities, all of them get it wrong, especially when they rush to be first. But when a news entity or a media entity deliberately uses untruth to perpetuate stories and revenue, that's very bothersome. But I think it's the good work does still stand out. And I think these extra platforms allow for more good work to continue to stand out. And I think that's important. And I'm glad there are more opportunities and more ways that producers and people like you and I can have a voice, a significant voice on multiple platforms and make a difference. So
Right.
That's important.
So does it feel like a responsibility to you? You have this talent where you can create stories, where you can shine a light on stories that need to be told. Does it feel like an opportunity, like a responsibility? What is that like for you?
I guess you could say, it's a responsibility. It's really what I care about. And so even you talked about mentoring. I mentor a lot of early 20 somethings, people that are maybe just getting started in their careers or just out of school, out of college, because I remember that being probably the most difficult time of my life. When I was 21, Kimberly, I was a father. I was poor. I didn't have a car. In Detroit, not having a car is like being nobody. Everything is, you don't have a car, you don't exist. I rode a bike. I pushed a stroller a mile and a half to get groceries for my newborn baby. And it was a very difficult, very humiliating time in my life. I got food stamps. I mean, I was poor and I was a, college dropout. That was a bad time. And I know most people don't have it as difficult as I did, but I understood deep inside me how difficult it is to be 21, 22 and trying to figure out what's my next move, what's the right move, what's the right path for me, and how do I get there? And you feel this sense of, if I choose poorly, it's going to ruin my life. It's going to deeply affect the outcomes I have in my life. And so I've kind of gravitated towards young people that I felt had talent, but were just struggling, because I can't mentor everyone. And people
Right.
have tried to get me to take on young people. And I'm like, if they're not talented or interested, because I'm not a babysitter, then I don't do it. But if I see somebody who's really bright and who's really interested and needs direction, definitely I help them. And I gave you a list, and one's a entrepreneur and a school manager, one's a social media expert, one's a fundraiser. One lives in the south of France and works for it's a communications person for an international food agency. I mean, these are exceptional young people. And so I found it a good thing to just be involved in their lives. And I've asked them even now to send me videos, because for some of them, it's been 15, 20 years. Send me a video about the first time that we met and what we worked on and what I helped you with and what you got out of it. And the responses so far have been amazing. They really have been.
It sounds to me like, well, first I should say, you're not someone that carries resentment about the challenges that you have dealt with in your life. You've just figured out a way to create solutions. And when you talk about the young people that you mentor, it seems to me like you have so much empathy for what they're feeling, and that allows them to feel, to be vulnerable to you and to actually be open to how you're able to guide them, and which I think is such a beautiful thing. What do you think your mentees have taught you?
Um, Boy, I've learned a lot from them. They're all different. I think some even are still involved with me, and I go to them for advice now, with projects, with ideas. And I think the thing about that is that because we spent so much time working together, usually it's a year or two I've worked with them. Some of them have stayed with me longer, maybe gotten another job, but stayed with me, done other projects, worked with me along the way. We really know each other. And so they know how I think and they know what I care about. And so I can go to them and say, what do you think about this? Or I'm thinking about this project, or I'm stuck right here. What do you think? And so they have been as helpful to me for a longer period of time than I was to them early on in their lives. So that part is good. And I think the other thing you said about challenges, I think one thing about living a difficult life, and I don't really share a lot of that because I don't think it edifies other people to know everything that I've been through, especially without perspective. But I would say that I've had almost every negative experience a person could have and survived it. And it's humbling to file for bankruptcy. It's humbling to be evicted from your home. It's humbling to have your car repossessed twice. It is. All those things happened to me, and I survived them. And you tend to at that point think about what's important. And so you always try to find the message or the lesson in every challenge, because you really find out later, after all the trauma that you've gone through, that you might miss it if you don't listen for that message. And I think that's important.
When you think about what you were going through when you were younger, that set of challenges, how much of a role did your natural curiosity play in getting you from where you were to where you wanted to be?
Boy, I think the thing about me is, and I've kind of discovered this as I've gotten older. My parents are both dead, and I remember now, it's like a deja vu. You kind of have an experience or a recollection of something. I remember when I was being 6 years old, and my mother just kind of smiling at me and saying to me that I was so encouraging. And I realized that from an early point in life, I think my mother knew me and knew that she could rely on me. And I think I took care of her in her later years in life when she had dementia. Because your parents really, they do know you. They know their kids. And so I think sometimes you just kind of rely on your natural instincts. It's not something that I've chosen to do. I've never felt like, no matter how bad things were, I never felt like I wasn't going to make it or I was defeated. And I know that sounds crazy, but I'm as bad as it was, I never felt like, I think a lot of things happened. They didn't go my way, but I didn't feel like I was at such fault that I was in danger of losing everything. I never felt that way.
So do you think that way of looking at challenges is partially innate, or is it learned, or is it a combination?
No, I just think for me, I think it's who I am. I'm just, I realize a few things. First of all, it drives a lot of other people batshit crazy. They hate it. they hate it and they resent me for it. And I didn't
They
get
they
that.
hate they hate positivity. They hate
Well,
optimism.
some people do. Some people hate the fact that all hell's breaking loose and you're just kind of not reacting to it.
Hmm.
And but that's not who I'm not, I don't freak out. And so I've never called you ever in 30 plus years and said, oh my God, the house is burning down.
Right.
I
You
remember
haven't.
I called you one day and said, Kimberly, I got cancer. I didn't, and I don't think I was freaking out.
Nope.
And I can't say I'm human. I mean, what I did when I first learned I had cancer, I probably cried every day for 2 weeks, not all day, but it was an overwhelming situation to confront. But I didn't get consumed by that. You get punched in the throat, you're probably going to get tears in your eyes, but it doesn't mean you're going to curl up in a ball and go home. And so it's just, cancer is like a drop kick in your chest because it's the worst thing being realized at that moment. And when they told me, well, you fractured your collarbone, but that's not the problem. I thought, oh my God, how can this be okay? And the doctor said, well, you've got spots on your bones. And I thought, oh my God, that does not sound good.
Can you talk about that moment in 2016? Talk about what multiple myeloma is and the treatment that you went through, which was for anyone. I mean, it sounds incredibly aggressive, the kind of a treatment that you've had to go through. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I was working in my yard and I was trying to pull start a weed whacker and it wouldn't work. And I thought, well, I got stuff to do today. I'm going to give it up. I thought, try one more time. I pulled that thing again and I heard just like a gunshot. And then I felt this incredible pain in my collarbone. And I put a bag, like a 10-pound bag of ice on my shoulder for 30 minutes. And then I took it off and I knew immediately it didn't get any better. Not one iota better at all. So I thought, this is really bad. And so when I went to urgent care, I got that crazy message that you got spots on your bones. And I saw a general practitioner a few days later, and he told me, well, I think you have this rare form of cancer that's treatable but not curable, but I'm not sure. We'll do some tests. They come back from the test results, and they tell me, this guy says, hey, you've got multiple myeloma. It's a bloodborne disease. It's attacking your bone marrow. It makes your bones fragile. I hope you got disability. I'm like, wow, what a message. And it was devastating because they wanted to start chemo like right away. And it involved taking oral steroids and getting these twice weekly injections in your stomach. And I did that for about 10, 11 months. And finally, I moved to they call it a maintenance drug, Revlimid, which is a really powerful drug. And so it's complicated my life because most people that get multiple myeloma need a transplant of their own stem cells right away within probably the first 2 years. And I never had a stem cell transplant at that time ever. And so I spent a lot of my time in remission talking to doctors about why haven't I had a stem cell transplant, because I didn't need one. So my remission went really well. And I told you I was on Revlimid for 44 cycles, which is, 4 years. And finally, I started 20 milligrams a week or a day down to 5 because it takes a toll on your body. It takes a toll on your kidneys. It's hard. It's a hard drug to take. And so I stopped taking it. And about 3 weeks after I stopped taking it, I found out I was getting, my numbers were getting bad suddenly. It was kind of surprising. It's scary. And I found out they did a bone marrow biopsy, which essentially drill a hole in your lower back and look for bone marrow, draw it out. And they couldn't get any bone marrow out. So that was not good. So a week later, they do it again, and they get a bigger piece of bone, and they say, oh, my God, your bones are impacted with this unusual form of leukemia. We got to take you into the hospital tomorrow. And that's, what that started. And that's really where we are now. But it's devastating. I mean, because you take medicine and even when you're in remission, you feel like that day I had in late January where it's going well and then it's suddenly not going well. You kind of know that day is coming at some point, that one day, no matter how well your remission's going, one day the numbers say you will not be in remission. And at that point you could be in crisis. And you try to put that out of your mind, but you know that it's hanging over you like a cloud. It's there.
Right.
Yeah.
So the recap of that experience was that you went through a year of intensive chemo after your diagnosis. Then you went into remission, and then you were on Revlimid for 4 years. No, is that correct?
Yeah, about 4 years.
44 treatment cycles, 44 months, 4 years. I think you had mentioned to me at one point that the monthly copay for that drug is how much?
It's about $19,500. Yep.
How does anyone, can you please explain to me, how does anyone deal with that?
Thank God for Obamacare.
So were it not for Obamacare, that cost would not have been covered. And you would, what possibly would have happened if you couldn't take that drug?
Be dead.
Right.
Yeah.
$19,000 a month. It's just such a shocking figure. I can't even really comprehend it. So then after the 4 years of Revlimid and it stopped working, shortly after that, only a few weeks after that, you were diagnosed with, it's called B-cell acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what do they know about this disease?
Well, here's the good part, and this is like me being optimistic, but the good part is it's a horrible disease. And you see, I had a bone marrow disease already. This leukemia comes out of nowhere. They don't know why. And just takes over your bone marrow. It just eats up all your white cells. And now you have nothing flowing in your bones. And that can kill you. The other part, it can attack your central nervous system too, your brain and your spinal cord. But it's treatable and it's curable. And they use a donor stem cell transplant to cure it. And the great thing about this is when they cure the lymphoma, the leukemia, they also cure the myeloma. So it's a double win for someone like me.
So you've so far been through 2 rounds of chemotherapy for that, once for 18 days, once for 4 days, and now you're about to go back to the hospital in a couple days for another week of chemo. What is that like to be in the hospital and just be there to get your treatment? What is that like?
It's kind of a cliche to say the food isn't good. It's not, but that's really not the problem. I think for me personally, it's oral steroids are horrible. Dexamethasone. I mean, it's life-saving, but it's a horrible drug to take. It takes the taste of the food away from you. It's got 5.5 half-life, so you take it for a week. You need about a month to recover from taking it, so you can taste your food again. And it makes you feel like crap. It spikes your blood sugar. But this is just about surviving. I mean, and it's really all it is. It's about, Kimberly, they tell you the most unusual, crazy things they're going to do to you, and you would be stunned at what you agree to. We're going to put a tube in your jugular. You're like, okay. We're going to give you a spinal tap. Okay. We're going to drill some holes in your back. Okay. I mean, you just say, okay. I mean, you look at a medication list for chemo and the side effects are terrifying. You just look away. You just don't even want to read that because you just hope it doesn't happen to you.
It seems inconceivable until you're going through it, and then you can't believe you're going through it. Yeah. Does that sound right?
Well, I think after a while, I'm not like going back to the hospital doesn't bother me because I've done it before. I mean, you don't know what the outcome is on any given stay, but my expectations are pretty high. I don't expect to be really sick from chemo drugs because I never have been, but I just don't worry about it. I mean, and that's the thing I was saying earlier. I've learned to really let everything go that doesn't relate to getting better. So people that I disagree with, I stop thinking about them. I don't worry about my bills because that's not going to help me.
Right.
I mean, really, I mean, I could be in the hospital. You could bring me $10 million in cash. If it's not going to help me, I need treatment. And so you've just focused on getting better.
It's interesting because I think that our conversation, the more you talk, the more I feel like we loop back to some major themes. And, at one point, and we had mentioned this earlier in our conversation today, but at one point you and I had a conversation about how there have been people in your life that felt like this way of thinking, where you don't freak out, where you essentially have a optimistic problem solving kind of perspective. Some people think of that as a liability, right?
Yeah, I've had people. My ex-wife felt that way, and I think too. I think part of just thinking about it. I think part of it is people that think differently than you do. We can't wrap our heads around it, and so we just kind of reject it. I think it's just such an odd thing that you're not scared or you're not afraid or you whatever, and they just think, or what's wrong with you? But
right.
I think for me, it's been a lifesaver for me, and it's not something that I put on. It's just who I am. But yeah, I'm not down about that. In fact, I remember when my oncologist told me about the leukemia, he was apologizing to me, and I had to grab him by the hand and said, don't apologize. The other doctor said I could be cured. Why are you apologizing?
Right.
That's a good
thing.
Right.
Amazing. I think that what I think is so remarkable about you is that the way you've always lived your life has, it really hasn't changed since your cancer diagnosis and all the treatment you've been through. It is the defining feature of how you've managed to create a rich and fulfilling life where you have so many people around you that love you and respect you and so many accomplishments that you can point to. I think it's just always been this way of being. It's what I remember from our time together in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we laughed so much. We learned a lot together. I just feel like you have that kind of way, and how interesting to see that when you're looking at cancer and all the things that come with that word, that it's this very way of being that has carried you through. I think it's incredible.
I never felt like, why me? I felt like this. If someone came to us, a medical professional came and said, okay, one of you all, one of your immediate family members, somebody's got to have this, I would have volunteered, honestly, because not my kids, not any of those three, not my wife. I mean, of course I would have volunteered. Now, I didn't volunteer for this, but I just think that if anybody could do it, I could do it. I could take it, and I'd be okay. And I think the fact that I can be calm or calm myself in a storm is very helpful to me. And I think it's become helpful to my family members because they see that I'm not freaking out, and so they don't freak out. I think the first time around was very difficult for them. I think as we have gone through it after it's been 5+ years, now they've seen me in bad days, and they've had tough times, but I'll be okay. And I've always told them I'm tired. I've told you, hey, if you're tired, you rest. That's how you handle it. Like, how do you deal with 18 days in the hospital? I do them one day at a time. I don't, you don't go in for 18 days. You go in for one day, and then it's the next day and the next day and the next, and then before you know it, you've been here, almost 3 weeks. I just kind of live my life that way. You just get through today. And at certain points with medication, it's difficult to take. You just get through the morning meds, and then the lunchtime meds, and then the evening meds, and the middle of the night meds. And you just do it that way. You don't get ahead of yourself.
It's a very Buddhist kind of way of living, to be that present, You're not thinking so much ahead, and you certainly aren't thinking about the past. You're very present to what you're managing and experiencing in the moment, which is a great way to go when the challenges are that extreme, right?
Right. I've tried to be that way. And I think, you think about faith, and I've kind of broadened my perspective on that, in that I believe in a supernatural power. I don't necessarily, I consider myself more universalist than anything else, because I think the idea that you believe in something bigger than yourself is more important than what you believe in. I'm not saying, believe in a tree or anything like that, but I'm just saying that I'm not gonna get into an argument with a Muslim or a Jewish person about their faith. It doesn't really matter to me, because organized religions are much more similar than they are different anyway.
Right.
So that's a waste of time, and so I don't spend a lot of time on that. I just think that you have to believe that you're going to be healed. You have to believe that the universe, that whatever divine being is going to hear your heart and cure you and treat you, make you better. And that's what I believe. And I think you put things in the world that you want back. And so, not being negative, not just kind of dismissing those kind of things. And nobody's perfect, but I mean, we all have our moments. But I really try not to focus on how much I dislike a person or a situation, and just try to look past that into how can I make this work for me? What's beautiful about it? How can I make it benefit me?
Right.
What can I learn from this?
Mm-hmm. A few years back, I read the memoir When Breath Becomes Air, which was written by the neurosurgeon Paul Kalanithi, who was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. I want to pull in some thoughts from his book as we talk, but he had said, my relationship with statistics changed as soon as I became one. The angst of facing mortality has no remedy in probability. So when I read that, it reminded me that people seem to want to know about prognoses when they hear about a cancer diagnosis. But what do statistics and probabilities mean to you and your journey?
I agree. I think it's like being in a ball game, and if the score's against you, you can't really focus on the score. Having cancer, I don't really care about what the likelihood of survival is or what the data says. I just don't. I get it, and I'm not saying it doesn't matter. I just think in terms of operationally, in terms of getting from this moment to the next moment, from this moment to healing, whatever, it doesn't serve you, because it occupies your mind in a way you don't know on that spectrum of where those numbers are and what your number is. We don't know what our number is. So if 7 out of 10 people pass away from this particular disease in a certain time frame, are you one of the 7? Or are you one of the 3? You know what I mean? It just, then you spend your time, all of a sudden now you're distracted thinking, am I 7 or am I 3? Am I in that group?
Right.
And you can't, I can't do that. So I just, I read information about diseases, but I don't focus on data. I really don't. It doesn't serve me.
Right. So when I think about what it must be like to have to undergo treatment and hear the doctors talk about what you need to go through, and my guess is that your emotions might be like a roller coaster: pessimistic, realistic, hopeful, delusional. These are things that Kalanithi talks about. But for you, do you emotionally inoculate yourself from those swings in some way, or do you go with those feelings? Do you feel them and then release them? What is your process?
That's a good question. I just, I don't know if it's something about me. I have attracted practitioners who are very forthright and honest, but but very affirming and positive at the same time. I remember early on when I was first diagnosed with myeloma, they told me, "Oh, you've got, osteoporosis. You've got kidney disease. I had all these ailments." I'm like, Jesus, yesterday I was fine. Now I got like 9 things that are killing me. And I saw this Indian doctor about the osteoporosis, and he said, like, if you had come in the door today, I would have told you to go home and not worry about it. He said, yeah, your bone, the brittleness of your bone on a spectrum, you might be closer to having osteoporosis than not, but you really don't fall into the category. He said, don't worry about it. Just go home. And the same thing the kidney doctor told me. She said, you might be on dialysis for a week, but I don't think so. Don't worry about it. And I learned not to worry about it. You can't fix it. I think they told me early on, you have to, you got to follow the doctor's orders. You got to take this medicine. You got to eat this or whatever. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, yeah, but you really have to do it. But I got the message. I get it. Whatever they asked me to do, I did it. And that's pretty much how I am. I don't know everything, but if they're telling me to do something that's going to save my life, I'm going to follow along. I'm not that person that's going to go the other way. So right. I don't, right. I don't get doctors who come to me and say, give me a lot of gloom and doom. They are really helpful. Plus, I think the odd thing for me is the struggle for the doctors right now is they don't have anybody who's taken Revlimid for 44 cycles and now has leukemia, this form of leukemia. And so they're not sure how I will respond to the normal treatment that they would have for somebody with this B-cell leukemia. So they kind of give you the medicine. It's kind of science at work, and they kind of wait and see. So that's one thing. The other thing is, overall, I'm healthy. I don't have heart disease. I don't have bad kidneys. I don't have lung disease. I don't have any chronic illness. And what I get is, you don't look 60. You don't look sick. And yeah, I'm 60, and yeah, I feel some days I don't feel well. So, but I've lost a ton of weight, but I'm not sick looking and skinny, but I look really healthy right now. And so it's kind of a misnomer, but I think it's helped me survive. I think if I had been really out of shape, and I've always worked out, rode bikes, played tennis, played basketball, played sports, done stuff, been active. And so that's helped me. People that have the illnesses that I have, who have chronic illnesses, they're in trouble. And they're going to, and I may have my struggles too, but they really are likely to struggle, much more likely than I am.
So this actually kind of brings me to this other question I have, which is that you have a history of being active, of practicing a healthy lifestyle. I think that most humans have an expectation of strength and invincibility. And when we don't feel the way we think we should feel, then sometimes we experience anger and frustration from not feeling the way that we want to feel. How have you managed those, that disconnect between how you usually are?
Never been an issue with me. I think whatever the ailment or the discomfort that you're feeling, it just is. And certain medications, certain treatment protocols you're on make you not feel that well. And you might feel that way for a day. You might feel that way for a week, and it just is. And when you don't feel that way, it goes away. I don't think you can analyze it any more than that. I think that's not effective to me. Like I said, if you don't feel well, rest. If you're tired, rest. If you're sleepy, sleep. You take as good a care of yourself as you can, but I don't put a lot of emphasis on how I'm feeling it doesn't mean, how I feel in any moment doesn't mean anything. So if you ask me how I'm feeling, most days I'm feeling pretty good. It could be better, but I'm feeling pretty good.
So it sounds to me like the way that you navigate this path is through acceptance.
Yes.
Whatever you're feeling, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think You have to. And I think it's not really a strategy. It just is. I think, it's a burden to overanalyze your feelings. I mean, I've told my son, sometimes my son will say, Dad, why don't we, I asked him, why didn't he do some chore or whenever he didn't feel like it? I said, well, I never feel like it. So, your feelings, and I know we have feelings and I care about people's feelings, but I mean, your feelings can't predict or control how you respond to life. You just got to, you got to get on with it. And if you're feeling so bad that you can't do it today, then you do it tomorrow. And I think I've learned that earlier in life because I suffered from depression, and I couldn't forgive myself for not feeling like it, for not being able to get out of bed or not being able to do certain things I believed I should be doing. It took me a long time to realize, you know what? It just is that way. You know what? Some days you don't feel that good. Some days you're a little down, and it's okay. You're not, who said you had to be up every day?
Right.
So you just kind of roll with it. Acceptance is critical. Yeah, absolutely.
So you really developed that way of kind of approaching those feelings, which sometimes can be super intense, that the feeling of acceptance, you didn't call it a strategy, you really called it just kind of a way of being, way before you even had your first cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
I mean, what a great resource, right? To really understand that just sort of not commenting, not sort of attaching any kind of judgment to how you feel is, it's a great way to.
You know why though, Kimberly? We talk ourselves out of so much in life. I realize that because I have certain goals and things I want to do, and I didn't do them as timely as I wanted to, or sometimes not at all, because I'd start out with a little problem, like whatever it might be. And the thing is, after my, an hour of self-talk, the problem became this giant nuclear explosion that I couldn't survive. And it's like, dude, you talk yourself out of so much stuff. Just stop thinking about it. Stop talking about it. When I said, and it's been a lifetime goal for me to go back to U of M, University of Michigan, and finish school. Because when I was 21, 22, I left school. And it took me 30 years to talk myself into it because I kept thinking about the perfect circumstance, and nothing's ever going to be perfect. And I realized sometimes you just have to just do it. And I'd gotten to the point of just saying, I don't care what the obstacles are. I'm just gonna do it. And it's the best thing I've ever done, not because of the academic approach, but just the idea that it doesn't matter what the challenges are. You just go forward. And I think that's the best thing ever. Just do it.
And it's also a very gentle way of talking to yourself. Mm-hmm. It's not constantly judging yourself, but being more gentle and accepting of how you feel in any given moment and just being present to those feelings, right?
Yeah, and I think you say to yourself, well, first of all, I develop some confidence. I know I can do this. And secondly, it's going to be okay. Whatever happens, whatever the challenges are, I'm equipped to confront those challenges. And so instead of being worried about, what if this person says this, or what if this authority figure does this, forget all that. Just it's like we talked about interviewing or doing production. I don't worry about what the challenges might be. I'm ready. I'm prepared. I know what I'm doing, and whatever happens, I'll handle it.
Right.
It's liberating. It's liberating to feel good.
Right. And we should note that you did finish that degree, and you're working on your graduate degree, correct?
I am, I would have finished that except for leukemia. I had to withdraw, take an incomplete this last semester. Right. It's the final semester for me, but I just couldn't, I could not study and take chemo drugs.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's frustrating because chemo, this idea of chemo brain, I just wish you feel like you have dementia almost when you're, not that old. And people do have early onset, but you're things that you just can't recall them, and you just feel sluggish. You don't feel
Right.
like yourself, and it's tough. That's really because you know 3 weeks ago I could do that. Now I can't, and it's frustrating. But
Right.
again, it just is. I mean, you're taking those drugs, and you know you need those drugs to live, but it impacts everything else that you do.
Right.
Hmm.
I think most of us walk around thinking that we have all the time in the world, but the truth is none of us can really know for sure how long we're going to be on this planet. And I remember reading this passage from When Breath Becomes Air,
Hmm.
where Kalaniki says, before my cancer diagnosis, I knew that someday I would die, but I didn't know when. After the diagnosis, I knew that someday I would die, but I didn't know when. But now I knew it acutely.
Hmm.
What does that say to you? What does that mean
Oh,
to you, what you shared?
I understand it in my own way. I think part of what's driven me the last 5, 10 years is this idea of legacy. And I thought about who would I be? Like, you're my friend. If I'm gone, what would you tell people about me? And you know what I mean? What would my legacy? And it's kind of like, because I'm a marketing major, branding. You know, people say, well, my brand is this, my brand is that. But that's not true. Your brand is what people say it is when you're not around.
Mm,
So, as much as you might think your restaurant is an upscale, heavenly place to dine, other people think it's a hole in the wall and the food sucks. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it except make better food. But you can't convince people that you're something that you're not. And so I think for your life, you think, what do I want my legacy to be? As much as I can control that, I focused on that. I wanted to leave something that would make my family proud, my children proud. And I think in that part, I've accomplished much of what I set out to do. And that was important to me. And then the other part that was important is to be the best person I could possibly be. And I think that, like you talk about mentoring, that's a part of it. I always say, let's make it better. Let's make our relationships better. Let's make the situations that we're involved with other people and other circumstances, make them better. We can't solve every problem, but I think sometimes people, they don't make things better. And sometimes they're driven by their own self-interest and they don't make things better. But, leave the world a better place than you found it. Leave your relationships a better place than you found them. And so what struck me is getting sick the second time. The number of friends, I have too many friends. I feel like I could share my friends with 2 or 3 other people. People that send daily affirmations of hope and prayer. I mean, every morning. It's shocking. People that call on a weekly basis. People that buy you lunch, send lentil soup, send stuff to you. It's unbelievable. And I'm so grateful for it. And it's so unexpected. And then people say, well, you're a good person. That's why we do it. And I accept that, but it's never, you don't walk around thinking I'm a good person. You don't think that, but I've always tried to be. And I've tried to do and give my best to people. Yeah.
When you think about what brings you comfort, what allows you to feel strong, what brings you to a place where you feel like you can keep going back and dealing with treatment, is it the work that you're doing, the mentorship, the impact that you make through your work as a producer? What works best for you to keep you where you need to be?
It's really not work. There are things that I want to do, like podcasting, things that I really care about. To me, they matter, but they don't really enter into it. I think it's the personal relationships and maybe some of the kids. They call them kids. They're kids to me. They're my kids that I've worked with and been able to make a difference for them in their life. Because I know that was a crushing experience for me, and I know for some of them it has been. So I think that's the thing. But my friendships, those are the things that matter. People like you that I know, well, that I know that love me, and we are able to share the experience going forward in spite of cancer, in spite of everything else. That's the stuff that matters to me. That you feel like if you really needed me, you could call me and you could expect me to be there for you. That's what matters.
Right.
And the fact that I know I would be. And I guess I've always been, like we talked about, people thought it was silly of me when I was a kid, but I've always been that person because I grew up that way. I knew what it meant to be a good friend to people. And I never wanted to be somebody's friend because of their wealth or their fame, because I was the kind of person, if I didn't like you, I didn't care what you had. It didn't matter to me. And we didn't need to be friends. I've always been that person. I mean, I care about people that I like and I respect. And having their respect back is what matters to me. And that's it.
This reminds me of a story that you told me when we talked recently about how when you're in the hospital getting treatment, your doctors, the psychiatrists or therapists, they come and spend their free time with you because you're energetically, the positivity that you are projecting, that just emanates from you, makes the healers want to come to you, I think, because there's a healing energy that you're giving off. Well, can you talk a little bit about that?
That's just like you talk about the work. I think that's just who I am. I have the ability to get people to tell me stuff that they wouldn't tell other people.
Yes, you do.
And I remember, and sometimes it's troubling. I mean, Myrlie Evers Williams is Medgar Evers' widow. Medgar Evers, civil rights leader, slain in his driveway in 1963 in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. And she came and did our television show at Detroit Public TV. And after the taping, I had read her book, and I wanted to ask her, this is mid-90s, 97, 98, it's been 25 years since your husband was murdered. What do you remember? Like right now, what picture comes to your mind? She said, the blood in the driveway. And I thought, oh, man, I didn't. And she started crying. I didn't mean it like that. And I didn't mean to bring up a painful moment. But I wanted to ask her, what do you remember? And people, they respond to me honestly and tell me. So when I talk to these doctors in the hospital, I talk to them about what I'm experiencing, what they're experiencing. And so there's a young resident from the Middle East. He's an immigrant. He came back to the United States when he was 8 or 9 years old. He grew up in Michigan. And we talk about his life coming back to the States and being an immigrant and how he fit in. He's 26 years old. And he'd come to my room every morning before breakfast and spend 15 minutes talking to me. And I was telling him about a project that I worked on for this really right-wing Trump guy in his election campaign this last summer. And I helped the guy he got more votes than anybody in Michigan. And he asked me a few days after I told him about that, he said, how do you deal with people like that? And I said, well, you have to separate your personal feelings from their humanity. I mean, as long as the person doesn't come at me with a bunch of negativity, I'm not going to throw the fact that he loves Donald Trump in his face. I'm just not. It's not worth it to me. And I don't expect to change his mind. He's definitely not going to change mine. And this, young doctor, he's a radiologist. He said, well, I have to learn to do that. And so, but yeah, I have had quite a few come and we just talk about life because people, people always say, oh, I know you're having a tough time because you're in the hospital. And I think some people are, and I'm not so much.
It sounds like you're holding court.
Yeah. Because I'm not right. Really, when I found out one day I had a spinal tap and I had to wait 2 days for the results to find out that I did not have any cancer, a leukemia in my spinal cord. That was the best day ever. It was the best. I mean, I sat in my hospital room and I looked out the window. It was a sunny day. It was cold outside, but I thought, what could be better than today? Because having cancer or leukemia in your brain and your spinal cord presents a set of challenges. I don't know if I'm up to that. I don't know.
Right.
So, yeah. And so, yeah, that was a great day. And I think you have to take every day. You can always say, oh, I wish I had $1 million. Oh, I wish I didn't have these problems. That's not my approach.
Right.
Because what you need for today is what you need for today. That's what I'm looking for.
I want to take a little side road for a second before we come back to our central kind of theme here. But can you tell me more about some of the notable people you've worked with and interviewed in your life that really stand out to you? I mean, you've talked about two that are really important figures, you know, in American culture. Mm-hmm. Who else comes to mind that you feel like, you know, is in this pantheon of notable figures you've worked with?
Well, some of them are kind of because of the relationship that you have with them when you talk to them at that time in their life. They stand out, not necessarily only because of their accomplishments, but Wynton Marsalis was one person that I really enjoyed talking to. And just really smart, really grounded, really serious young man. He's about a year younger than me, but he really was. And I found him to be a really deep thinker and a great person to talk to. Berry Gordy Jr., Motown founder, just a tremendous interview and a really nice person, which just kind of surprised me. I thought he'd be more aloof, more kind of above it all, but he was just really genuine, really nice. I'll tell you another guy was really nice. He died. God, he died in maybe early 2000s. Lou Ross, the guy that was the United Negro College Fund guy.
Right.
And we interviewed him at Music Hall and during his rehearsal, between rehearsals, and he wanted us to stay like all day. He was so nice. And I mean, really like an uncle, just a really nice man. And, you know, he's got a bunch of Grammys, he's platinum records, and just a regular guy, really nice man. So, yeah, those are just a few of the people that you meet. And, you know, and I haven't had really very many, but I've had maybe a couple really bad experiences with people. I won't name them. But, yeah, most people are amazingly kind. They really are. Because I think they're genuine. Mm-hmm.
Right. And it helps that you know how to bring out their real side where you can kind of access the authentic person that's facing you, even though they may be very well known and renowned or whatever. You do have that way. And I think that to me is a big part of why you have good experiences with the people that you interview.
They care that you know something about them. They do.
Right. You've done your homework.
Yeah. If you've read their book or you know their story, they'll talk to you. If you haven't, you can forget about it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you are the father to 3 wonderful children, Lisa, Sydney, and Anthony Jordan. They're from 37 years old to 17. And you've been married to your incredible wife, Stacia, since 1996. So I want to talk a little bit about family and caregivers. Mm-hmm. I know that you being you're thinking about their experience as much as you're thinking about yours.
Absolutely.
What have you learned through this experience with your wife and your family about what it's like for them and how on your end you feel like you can help them through their journey too?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how much I can help them. I think you think that, but you know, it's what they really think. They probably have not told me. Sydney, the middle child, she says, Dad, just, you know, she's away at school. She said, just tell me what's going on. Don't sugarcoat it. Just tell me. And I understood that. I think Lisa, the oldest one, probably has a tougher time. You know, she worries more, whatever. But we have, she's an adult. We have a different relationship than the other kids. My son has done pretty well. He's been dealing with this for a third of his life almost. And so, for him, I remember when he was little, he was 12, and this first happened. And, he said, well, are the doctors going to fix your bones? And I said, well, they're working on it, but, not right away. And he said, well, are you going to die? I said, well, yeah, eventually, but not today. And I told him, I said, don't worry about it. I said, we don't know what's promised to us, how long we're going to live, but you can't worry about that. Just enjoy the day. And he said, okay, Dad. And, we've just kind of, I don't think he's worried about it. I think they're concerned, but I don't think that they worry about it.
So I'm thinking that there very well may be people that are listening now that are either going through treatments or have someone that's close to them that they love that's going through treatment. Can you talk a little bit about, is it okay to express fear to the person that you love that's dealing with cancer? Is it okay for the person with cancer to express fear? And is it okay to be vulnerable?
Those are good questions. They're tough questions, but I don't know. I mean, I think if you're afraid, who can tell you not to be afraid?
Right.
I don't know if that's anyone's place. If your caregivers are concerned or afraid, I think you have to address it. They're not going to not be that way because you don't want them to be. I think you have to be realistic about that. And I think too, addressing it head on helps it go away, helps you get a handle on it. So I think if people are afraid, they should probably talk about it. I don't think you dwell on it. I think it's normal to be afraid. I'm not a person that is going to live in fear. So I would talk about my concerns, but I have to move myself to a place where I'm not controlled by them. I mean, right. Nobody wants to die. And I think when I think about that, I think about being kind of left behind, that the world will go on and I'll be left out of it. Like a party is going to go on and I'll have to miss it. But other than that, I mean, I don't worry about that because eventually, we're not going to live forever. So that's not a thing that you can really be upset about. Nobody ever, it's not like you're going to die and everybody else gets to live on forever. You're really missing out.
Right.
Like, it's not really unfair, So,
right.
Yeah. But I think if you have concerns about whatever it is, about your own mortality, about being leaving your family behind or your loved ones, how they're feeling, I think people should talk about it. I think culturally, some people do it better than others, maybe, but I think if it's a concern, you gotta address it.
So when you bring it out in the open, that's the thing that helps you to release as much of that fear or anxiety that you may have.
Sure.
Is by really just being able to discuss it and being able to be in the room with that fear, right?
Yeah, and I think for anybody, I think that's part of getting over it. I think you gotta sit with it sometimes, just like if you have grief. I mean, you just sometimes, like I said, I cried. I didn't cry because I was scared, or it's just an emotional reaction. It's like you're sore when you get injured. When I broke my collarbone, it hurt more than anything ever in life. And it hurt for 6 weeks, and there's nothing I could do about it. And for 6 weeks, it was going to hurt like hell. And so, I mean, I couldn't put my hand in my pocket. I couldn't turn a doorknob. I couldn't zip my pants. I mean, it was horrible, but you just have to deal with it, and it'll go away. Just like the broken bone, it will heal. It'll go away.
Right. So if you were to talk to people that have learned about the diagnosis of a friend or family member, I think most people don't really know what to do or what to say and how to help. What is your advice to those folks?
You were very good at it. I think about you, and I remember is that you told me about your sister-in-law,
Right.
and that was
Who, by
encouraging.
the way, I just have to say is a lot like you in terms of how she looks at the world.
Mm.
So I just instantly felt like you would probably have a very similar way
Hmm.
of managing all of that. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that was helpful. You kind of shared a common experience with me. You were very empathetic. I think about other friends. Other people showed up in my driveway with a book for me. Some people called. Some people just expressed real concern. And then some people they didn't mean to be, but they were kind of being like ultra practical, like, do you have life insurance? And, that kind of stuff. It's just like, whatever. But I think just addressing whatever you think the person needs and then talking to them. Because you did. I mean,
Right.
you asked me, did I want something to read, or did I need this? Did I need that? And I think that just having your friends be there for you and support you is the most important thing. You don't always have to have something wise to say, as much as just, I have a couple friends, guys, and these are not guys. I mean, guys are guys. And they, for have these guys call me every week. This one friend of mine calls me maybe once or twice a week. How you doing? How's it going? How the kids? How's Stacy? How's everything? Just pretty much, need anything? Can I do anything? That's it.
Right.
But I can depend on him to call me.
Right.
He called today. So yeah, I think those are the little things that help get people through it. And like I told you, everybody's journey is different and everybody reacts differently, and so I don't expect people to react like I do. I just think that you have to find your own way of managing, and whatever those things are that help you manage it, you've got to stick to that plan. And if,
Right.
if you need to, and then I think most importantly, I found getting negative ideas and negative people away from me was very important.
So that's really key. So not only is it that, so when we're thinking about what people can do to help, it's keeping in touch. It's not being afraid to communicate, to ask questions, to be supportive, to just be present for the person that's actually going through it. But for the person that's going through it, feeling okay and at peace with letting go of people that don't have the energy that you need.
No.
Right, to move forward.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
That's
I
key.
mean, yeah, I just can't. I can't even deal with it. It's like even one friend of mine, like this guy, I grew up with him, and he's trying to reach out to me, but his energy, it just doesn't meet mine. I just can't do it. And I know I felt bad because he's like, why won't you call me? I just can't even. I don't have the energy for it. I just don't. I don't want to deal with that. So. Yeah, and I'm not afraid to, because I think it's not what I need, and I'm not afraid to claim what I need. So, and I don't have to apologize for it, not at all.
Exactly.
No.
So I think this is my last question for you, but we'll see how it goes. So how does grappling with diagnosis and treatment change how you perceive yourself or your goals or your purpose, or has it changed you in any way? Change your identity and how you see yourself?
I think, honestly, I would say it's probably sharpened my perspective. In that I'm more concerned about the things that matter to me and less about things that don't matter, and I'm unapologetic about it. I have kind of gotten rid of a lot of frivolous ideas that I had. And focused on the ones that I thought really were beneficial to me and to my hopes and dreams. And then the other thing, I haven't put anything on the back burner. I haven't said, oh, I won't ever get there, or I don't have enough time. I have not done that, and I'm not going to do that. And yeah, I wish I have lesions on my bones, and my bones are brittle, so I can't lift weights. I can't play tennis. I can't throw a ball. it's possible that some of those things will go away after I have a stem cell transplant. I'd love to play tennis again. So in my mind, I may play tennis again. I talked to one of my mentees about playing tennis again. She said, if you can play, I'm going to play with you. I'm going to fly from LA and play tennis with you. And
Right.
so, yeah, I mean, I don't think you give up on that. It's not about giving up. It's about being focused. And I think sometimes, like you said, a wake up call, you heard people say that, it can be in a sense, a personal wake up call. And I'm glad that I had turned the page on that 6 months prior to, or maybe even a year before I got sick. I turned the page on that part and adjusted my attitude accordingly. So I had prayed for patience when I went back to school, and I thought I needed patience because I was in a hurry to graduate. And I realized the patience that I needed was to survive this. And not, and so that's what I'm saying about, we talked earlier on in the conversation about revelations, about different things that you have in your mind. There are things that'll come to you and you'll realize, boy, I needed this thing here for another reason. I thought I needed it for this, but what I really needed was for this thing that happened to me, 12 months later that I didn't even know I needed at the time. And so
Wow.
you just have, as you go through and you keep your mind open, you find out the things that I need. I realize I have everything that I need. And I found in this journey with cancer, I was not short of anything that I needed to survive it. And we always think that what we need is outside of us, and it's not. We have more than we need. We really do. We don't recognize it. But I had the friends, all these friends. The guy that calls me, I've known him since I was a little boy. The guy that calls me every week, I've known him since I was 7 years old, 8 years old. I've known you for 30 years. My other friend I've known for 40 years. You know what I mean? I have all these people have been in my life for a long time, and they've shared their wisdom and their knowledge with me. They've shared their love with me. I have what I need, and it wasn't like I lost sight of it, but it confirmed it for me.
Right.
So I never felt like, and I've never felt like, woe is me or I'm lacking in anything. And I haven't had one moment of that in my life. So I'm good with it. I'm really good with it. I don't worry about that kind of stuff.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm happy to be part of your circle. I mean, I have so much gratitude that we've remained friends all these years, because we were mere youngsters when we first met.
Well,
and we've been down the road quite a bit.
You're a serious person. You always have been, and I think that's the thing that I really respected about you, is that you are a very serious person. You took the work seriously, and you took relationships seriously, and I've always respected that about you. And I think those are the things. I think the things that we have in common are so much greater than our differences. And even when people disagree with us or disappoint us, it's not the end of the world. I mean, people disagree, so what? I mean, I said that about my wife. I mean, I married her because I knew I needed her in my life. And in fact, that's one of those revelations. I didn't even understand in 1996 how much I'd need her in 2016. I had no idea. And that, I mean, honestly, when I went in for 18 days, I was so fatigued, I couldn't even wash myself. And if my wife didn't come to the hospital and bathe me, I would be dirty and smelly. Because, I mean, physically, my hemoglobin, the air in my body and my blood was so low, I would be out of breath scratching my head. I mean, it was that bad. And so to have somebody take care of you, not as a nurse, but with love, and it's an amazing thing that you have somebody that you trust completely to take care of you and take care of everything else in your life, to do your banking, to do everything. And I've never had a second thought about trusting her and whether our relationship was real and things were really true between us. That's the greatest thing ever.
Well, I feel lucky that I was able to meet you two before you got married.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember what it was like at the very beginning of your courtship. And I saw that spark and I saw that magic between the two of you. It was like two bright, shining lights together, just making this giant glowing orb of laughter and fun and positivity. And, I saw it back then. It was unmistakable. You could not miss
Stacey
that
and
energy.
I had fun, but I'm like that with people that I care about. Stacey and I had fun, like you and I. I remember we were doing that City for Youth thing, and we rode around in the station van with the crew, and we laughed, and we went to lunch, and we laughed in the office, and you bring stray dogs in from on the way to work, and we laughed. And then your handwriting was really bad, as bad or worse than mine. And you'd leave me notes and you drive off somewhere and I'd have to call you and say, okay, I know you left a note. All I can read is your name. So and I think it's the sense of honesty and love that you have with people. There aren't that many people that aren't defensive or get offended really easily. And so, you and I have had that in a sense too, where we've just been like I always said, you're my sister because, I can tell you stuff and, we don't judge each other. We support each other. I don't remember the last time we really disagreed about anything. And it's not that you have to agree all the time, but we just don't have that kind of relationship.
Right.
And so, and you don't have that with everybody. Some people you just listen to and they drive you crazy. You don't want to hear anymore. And that's just, I've never felt that way about you. And so the thing is, when I don't hear from you after a certain amount of time, I get a little concerned. That's my only thing with you. If I don't hear from you for probably 6 weeks or so, I'm like, okay, what's she doing? That's it. Other than that, I don't have a problem.
Well, you are indeed my brother from another mother. So, and I've always felt that way about you. So as we wrap up, I just want to read a passage from a book that actually just got released, which was written by Claude Anshin Thomas, who happens to be the Buddhist teacher of my beloved life partner, Frank.
Wow.
The book's called Bringing Meditation to Life. But this passage in this book makes me think of you. And so I just have to read it before we say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
So it's titled Our Lives Ripple Outward, and it's just 2 little paragraphs. Our lives are like stones thrown into a pond. When the stone enters the water, the ripples expand outward and change the whole pond. Likewise, if we live in forgetfulness and non-mindfulness, our suffering will spread out and fill the pond. But if we live with an unwavering commitment to waking up, our healing will instead spread outward and eventually touch everything. If I realize the teaching of interconnectedness, then I can come to a place of understanding, a place beyond the intellect, a place where I am not separate from anything. And here I will discover that I have an impact, that my actions have an impact on the whole world. And I love this passage because I think of you instantly, because this idea that you live your life knowing that everything that you do has a ripple and every connection you make has some kind of impact. That's how you live your life. You're constantly, making sure that every action that you take has a positive intention. And that affects the people beyond you. And then they in turn want to do the same for other people. So I just wanted to read that to you because it's very emblematic of how I feel about you.
That's kind. And I think in an ideal sense, then that is the goal. I mean, that is to inspire the best in the people that you care about and even other people. I remember When I first was diagnosed, I had to go to the floor, they call it K13 at Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, and it's the cancer place. And so I hated it. I mean, go for chemo. I thought, oh my God, I can't do this. And then it just struck me, you know what? You walk in here, you get this shot in your stomach, you walk out. There's other people that are tethered to a pole for IV chemotherapy. They're here 4 hours, 8 hours. You walk in and walk out. What's your problem? And I realized, man, I'm being a big baby. So I said, I'm going to have a better attitude. I'm going to treat people well when I'm there. So one day I'm there and I'm leaving and I sit at the elevator and there's an older black lady sitting there. And I said, how are you? And she said, I'm fine. How are you? I said, I'm great. I said, why are you here? She said, I'm here for chemo. I said, oh, I am too. She looked at me like, you're kidding. I said, no, I am. I said, we're in this together. And she laughed and she held my hand, you know, and it's a moment like that. You realize instead of complaining, instead of thinking about how bad you have it, you know, make it better for somebody else. And I realized as a patient, the little moments where the nurse is kind or the person that draws your blood is kind is worth its weight in gold. And little kindnesses make the world go round. Not big mouth people, but just a kind word, because you never know what someone else is really going through.
Right.
And so it's so important to be kind and be mindful of that. And because you just don't know. You just never know. Well,
I am so grateful that you took the time for us to have this combo and that you let me kind of take over your podcast. What an honor, man. So thank you for this time. It's really been special, and I appreciate the inspiration that you've always just kind of naturally by just being you have provided me with since the day we met when we were young back in the day.
Yeah,
so
we were young. We used to be young.
We were young back then. I'm grateful for you, Tony.
I'm grateful.
Thank you so much for the time.
You. Thank you so much. It's been great.
Thank you.
All righty. Open Source with Tony Mottley is a production of Duet Digital Media and McLaughlin Media.